Hey everyone, my name is Jace and I'm a community manager for myself, and I'm a solo game developer living here in Sweden. Also go by the name Gemballs. Welcome to the video. And it has been a while since I've done a little game dev progress update thing. So I've had some people ask, what's going on? What's happening? And there's been progress. There have been setbacks, I want to say, or I'm not really sure if there's setbacks. I'm not really sure what I was expecting. So let's just talk about all the things that happened over the past few months. First of all, October and November were kind of content creation heavy and focused months. And the plan is not to focus so much on content creation, but a lot of things ended up coming together at the same time. So there were sponsored streams, there were charity streams, videos, traveling to, if you've seen last week's video, traveling to Belgium for a show. A lot of things that were going on. But not only were there a lot of different things, but a lot of those things were just new. And so that occupied a lot of my brain energy and focus to try and learn to navigate. So the cool thing about that is I've learned a lot, and I already feel myself much more easily navigating things of that nature. I have a better idea of how much I can put on my plate. And the other good things being that I had a lot of fun doing it. It was fun, learned a lot of things, met some cool people. It was great, okay? So no regrets, but that was a really content creation focused time. What I did sort of learn from it as well, though, is that I want my time to be dedicated to the game more than content. And so throughout December, I was I'm spending more time doing the game and focusing on the game. At that point, I had also canceled my scheduled development streams. Not canceling dev streams entirely. I have done many dev streams since, but that I wanted to get rid of the scheduled nature of the dev streams. Mostly because I found myself in a position where I was more focused on finding stuff that was streamable versus stuff that I needed to be doing. And some folks are everything is streamable, it's fine, right? And actually some of it is not streamable, and then there's just some things that I'm not comfortable streaming. And some things that I'm not comfortable streaming are things that I need to do. So basically, I stopped the schedule thing. I was when I have streamable things that I want to stream, then I will do that. So that's kind of what happened there. So December was a bit of a slow month because I hadn't done dev for about a month or so, and I was trying to get the balance of game dev back again and get those cogs turning and spinning and getting momentum again. So throughout December, I spent most of that time focusing on art studies, because art is still a massive question mark in this game and this game development process. I still don't know if it's something that I can actually achieve. I'm sure I'll get better, and I have been getting better, but I don't know if I'll get better in time to make my game, if that makes any sense. So I wanted to dedicate a bunch of time to that, see how that felt, and see what I could learn. And that is what I did throughout December. It was slow, it was painful, it was an endless cycle of trying, failing, and hating everything that I made. And I've spoken to other artists, friends of mine. I've expressed these feelings to them, and they were just kind of yeah, that's art. That's kind of what that's like. So that's something to adjust to and learn how to sort of cope with and deal with. So, and I feel like I, to some degree, have improved in that regard, but I think I need to get better. But unfortunately for this month, I don't really have too many pieces to show, because there was a lot of experimentation, a lot of exercises and things like that, and a lot of making stuff that I really loathed, to the point that I didn't want to continue working on it anymore. And maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I should have stuck with it anyway. Or maybe scrapping it and starting anew was the right thing to do. So I did a lot of that too. But on the tail end of this, I feel much more comfortable with Sprite. I did learn a bunch of new things, and I learned a bunch of new tools, and I feel more competent with art now and whenever I approach it, which is nice. But I also still feel the limits, the ceiling there. I still very much feel what I can't do. And so I'll just keep at it, and hopefully that skill ceiling will rise for me a little bit, and I'll be able to do more over time. One thing that I wanted to mention with the art, though, is I did do some art study of Eastward. Here's some stuff that I can show you. So Eastward is a game that I think has beautiful art in it, and so I was doing some art study of that. I was recreating one of their buildings, it was almost a carbon copy at first, and then I made some minor adjustments, and then I tried to make another building that was could this building exist in the Eastward style? And I was really happy with how this turned out. So this is pretty cool. And in that process, I was also interested in how Eastward handled tiling floors. And so while I was sort of studying that and noodling around with tiling floors, one thing led to another, and I ended up with this black and white image, okay? And this looks kind of all right. This looks kind of all right. It's a lot of tiling floor because that's what I tried to do. But one thing led to another, and I started using some of the techniques that I had learned in Eastward to see if I could make some buildings that sort of like make sense with these tiling floors. And this is interesting, I think. It's the first signs of life, I feel. And this is a scene that could be from my game. It is of the resolution that it needs to be. The scale of the objects work well for 48 pixel tall characters, which is kind of what I'm going for. It is black and white, and the reason for this is because I don't get color yet. I don't get it. So for the moment, I'm just going for black and white, grayscale, so I can get the contrasts going, and I will tackle color a little later. And this was just interesting. It was the first signs of life, and it was kind of exciting. It looked like something that could be from my game, so that was cool. And so this is the major thing I think that kind of came out of this art study. There was one other thing. I did a little bit of 2D animation, which was pretty cool. I made this little blob character who does, this is just a walk cycle with them. You can see that they walk up and down. They also walk left and right. The left and right animations are 6-frame animations. The up and down are only 4 frames. I'll fix that later. But this is my second ever 2D animation, and actually I'm pretty proud of it, especially the 6-frame one. I'm actually quite proud of it, and the purpose of this blob is to, one, have that in as the playable character for the time being, but this is also like a template for how I would take other characters that I've made, and there are characters that I've already sort of like sprites that I've made, and using this blob I would sort of model their walk cycles after this so that I could maybe more easily create other NPCs that can walk around the map, for example. So that was the purpose of the blob. So all of this stuff is what kind of came out of the art practice. It isn't a lot of different things, but I learned some skills, and we have some tangible stuff too. So by this point, I was pretty burnt out on art and the emotional roller coaster it was inflicting upon me. So I decided that I will switch gears and I'll go towards level design, because I need to start building out some kind of level, because there are other questions like, will these tall buildings work in my game? Also, what other programming features are needed to navigate these kind of levels. So I think it was like, there's a lot of questions that still need answering on the level design side of things. So I figured I'll shift gears to that and make some things and see what I can learn from that. And so what I did was I took this little scene that I had made and I started chopping it up into a little tile map. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna go with tile maps for buildings in the future. I'm not too sure yet, but for the moment, I just wanted it as a tile map because that way I could very easily create other variations and just quickly build out a level just so I could see what do things sort of look like on the screen when I move around, basically. And this was actually a really fun process, and it was a very insightful process as well. It showed me that there are certain limitations to the way that I design some things, or other new things to consider. For example, like what tiles do I need, or how do I add variations in, without bloating the tile map too much, or how do I handle collision? So like my first instinct, for example, was, well, add collision to the wall tiles. And this makes sense, generally speaking. You don't want to walk through walls. But the wall tiles are reused at higher levels of a high-rise building where you want to walk behind the building, but there's collision there now. So those could, of course, be on like a different collision layer, blah, blah, blah. But then what I realized, what I really want collision around is just the base of buildings. And actually, I don't want collision on the walls of buildings at all. It's just the base of the building that I want collision around. So just these little realizations that I kind of came to. And so that's how actually I work with the collision in these buildings now. They have these like other collidable tiles that are sitting below them on a different layer, and all the art actually has no collision, with some exception. And so another thing that it highlighted to me was that, again, as I mentioned before, I want these like tall buildings, and this is a top-down 2D pixel art game. You can't turn the camera around or whatever, and if your character walks behind a building, you can't see them anymore. So I had known that this was going to be an issue for quite some time, and I was interested in tackling this issue and finding a solution. And so this led to me experimenting with Godot shaders for the first time ever to see if I could find some kind of solution. Godot has a shader language that you can write shader code in, which is cool. But Godot also actually has a really, really comprehensive visual shading system as well that is pretty easy to use as well. So it was really, I tried that out first, and it was really great to get things up and running and to prototype things really quickly. And one other feature that I loved with this visual shader coding language thing, this is similar to things that you can find in like Unreal. I think Unity might have it as well. It's a fairly common thing, but this thing also generates the shader language code. I'm not sure if that also does that in Unity. I don't know if it does in Unreal. But that was really cool. I thought that was cool. So what I did was I initially used the visual shading system to create this kind of solution, I suppose you could say. Now, one downside with this approach is that you can only see what is immediately around your character, but I don't want that for my game. I want you to be able to see like the entire street that you're on, for example, or at least behind the entire block that you're near, you know, that kind of thing. So what I ended up doing was I ended up converting the visual shader stuff to code, making a duplicate of that, and then starting to modify that. And I came up with this other solution instead. So right now, when you walk behind buildings, I can sort of like fade away certain blocks. I could even change it so that I could fade away entire streets, for example, so an entire street becomes visible. We'll see what the game needs in the future. But yeah, I went with this kind of solution for now, and it works out fairly well. So the way this works is that there's an accompanying script that I can attach to trigger points in my level so that I can then manually specify what to hide and what not to hide when the player touches it. So for example, if a player enters a street, I can choose what should we be hiding now so that we can still see the player. And I thought this approach was pretty good because it gives me a lot of control because I can choose what I hide and what I don't hide based on certain triggers on the level. And only requires just a tiny bit of grunt work, which I think will actually work okay with my game even at scale. The added control also allows me to hide things in certain nooks and crannies and only hide those things if I wish to, because instead of hiding an entire block, I can just hide a certain segment. Now, this feature isn't completely done yet. The effect isn't final or anything like that, but it is meaningfully solving the issue that I had for the moment, and I'm not as concerned about this aspect of the game anymore. We'll see if its ugly head rears itself again in the future, but for the moment, I'm happy with this and time to move on. At this point, I think towards like the end of December and the beginning of January, I decided to pick up my programming tasks again and to hammer out a bunch of features, reworks, and improvements that I wanted to make. And it's uncanny how much more fun and effortless programming feels compared to art, level design, and writing. It's simply because I've been a programmer for a long time and I'm new to the other things, but it's always nice to return home, you know, to my wheelhouse and get some easy W's. So that was great. So throughout January, I went berserk with new features and fixing some previous things that I needed to fix up. And we're only halfway through the month. Now, before we get on with the programming features that I've added to the game, I want to talk to you all a little bit about today's video sponsor, Zenva. If you're excited about game development with Godot 4, you've got to check out Zenva Academy. They offer easy-to-follow courses that are ideal for both beginners and intermediate-level developers who are looking for structured learning pathways. What's awesome about Zenva is that they make learning fun and practical. You get professional video tutorials, written lessons, and interactive quizzes, plus you get to work on real projects building games in different genres like open world, RPGs, and FPS. Zenva isn't just about Godot. They have courses on Python, Unity, Unreal, and other tools. With one subscription, including a 7-day free trial, you unlock over 250 courses and 32 learning pathways. And here's a special deal. Use the link in the description or pinned comment to get an extra 20% off the first year of your annual Zenva subscription on top of any existing site discounts. That's a significant saving for a world of game development knowledge, and this offer is only available to the first 50 subscribers, so get in there quick. So if you're ready to dive into Godot 4 or explore any other game development areas, Zenva is the place to be. So grab this offer and get started on your game development adventure today. Thank you very much, Zenva, for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. Let's get into the programming stuff. Let's do it. Let's go. So one of the first things that I improved upon was the NPC interaction functions. Previously, I had some very, very bare bone interact functions set up. And the way that it worked was that I would put an NPC in the world, and then I would put an interact collision thingy around them. And it would just look like you interact with the NPC, but there was no actual tie-in between NPCs being interactable and interaction. So I've refactored the interaction system to use an interface instead, so that like there are many different kinds of interactable objects that could in theory exist, one of which are NPCs that can be interactable. On top of that, there's also some additional special functionality for interactable NPCs. So for example, there's a flag on them if you want them to look at you when you interact with them. That's one example. And NPCs, if I create a whole new NPC class, for example, for a specific NPC, they now have interact custom interact functions in them, so that everything and all their behaviors are contained to their own class now. Whereas before, previously, I had this one generic class called interact functions, and I would just like hand code different interaction functions, which I still have and still want as just a low effort generic way to handle low impact interact situations and scenarios. That is still supported. But when it comes to like individual NPCs that have anything more than spitting out a one-liner, then I now have these classes that I can create for them. The next thing that I've added is a quest system that has support for multiple steps within a quest. It has support for quest rewards and quest requirements, and these quest requirements can also include other quests, for example. So by that logic, we now actually have support for quest chains, and I actually have a demonstration of that, you know, working well in the game right now. So that's kind of cool. I've also added some quest markers as well. I can drag and drop them onto NPCs. They appear above the NPCs' heads. I can give each individual quest marker what quests it should be tracking, keeping track of, and it automatically updates its state above the relevant NPC, depending on the state of the quest that it's supposed to be tracking. It also has support for tracking multiple quests and certain priority systems for, well, what quest marker should be shown if there's one to hand in, or one that's in progress, or one that you haven't got yet. It also hides itself if there are no quests that are unlocked that the player can actually get yet. In order to make the quest system, for example, if, you know, to have items to hand in, I needed some kind of inventory system. So we've also now got an inventory system. Next up, I also created a pause menu. So I wanted the pause functionality for starters. So if you pause a game, I would like animations to stop in the background and general logic of the game to stop. But I want logic and animations of the pause menu to continue and animate in or do whatever they need to do, and also listen for input. So I can't just freeze the game, right, when you pause. Yes, but, you know, I wanted that functionality there. And Godot has some amazing implementation for this that makes it suspiciously easy to do this. Godot's solution is to use a thing called process modes. And basically what it means is that you can have certain nodes in your game's scene that can have certain process modes assigned to them. And this basically means, when should these nodes be processed? Should they be processed when the game is unpaused, or only when the game is paused? Always process them, you know? That's basically what you can do. And so what I do is I basically set the game, all the relevant things in the game, to not run when the game is paused, and then only the pause menu stuff and the pause menu logic to run when the game is paused. And then all you do is you just tell the game to be paused. Just one line. This took 5 minutes to make, by the way. And immediately I had the ability to pause the game, freeze the animations, have a menu pop up. The logic of the menu still runs, and then when I close the menu, you know, the main game starts running again. It worked really, really, really well, so that was super nice. Now, just having a pause menu that just says some random text on it is all well and good, but I wanted there to be some other, like, you know, your in-game menu functionality stuff. So the two things we have right now is an inventory and a quest log, so I figured let's just make a couple tabs, a couple pages in the pause menu where we show what quests we have, the state of them, have the ability to look at the information about the quests, to see what rewards that we have, and then also an inventory tab to show what items we have. And currently the way it is right now is you hover over stuff and you can sort of see what the item and the description of the item is. So we have that now. And also all of these things, quests, items, and the UI that displays them all supports localization. So that's nice as well. Some more work has gone on my cutscene system, which is a system that I haven't really made a video about yet. Maybe I can do that in the future, but it's a very similar system to the dialogue system where I queue a bunch of actions and then they just kind of get processed. And the way that the cutscene system will sort of work is, as I make the game and as I go, I just create new types of cutscene actions that are needed. So for example, I needed a couple more cutscene actions here where when talking to people, I wanted, so I'm talking to someone and then I get a quest from talking to them. So I needed there to be a cutscene action where at a certain point in the cutscene, I get a quest, for example, or I complete a quest, for example. So I've been adding some additional cutscene actions to make cutscenes a little bit more fleshed out and a little bit easier to use. So that's a feature that is just going to keep growing and developing over time, I think. And actually, speaking of the dialogue system, that has actually been improved to work with string tags now. A lot of people mentioned that I should be using string IDs for the dialogues instead of integer IDs. Basically because if I add some text somewhere, the integer IDs will go off, and that, you know, would become a problem. And there are certain ways that I designed the system where that actually becomes not that big of an issue anymore. And I certainly don't agree that I should use string IDs instead of integer IDs. But in taking that feedback on board and thinking about it a bunch, I did come to the conclusion that I should also have support for string IDs. And so I created these string tags, basically. And so I have the option to use both systems. I can use string IDs, I can use integer IDs, but I can also use them together. And I think that this is the ideal setup here. What it means is, like, I have all sorts of additional helper functions now where I can say, push from a specific tag to another tag. And I don't have to create string IDs for everything in between. It'll just like create these kind of like blocks of dialogue, essentially, if I use it that way. I could also use tags in a way where I could give the same string, I could give multiple strings the same tag, and then randomly select one string from whatever strings have that same tag, basically. And so that way I can get multiple different responses from an NPC without having to write any logic for it. And so I think we're in the best case scenario here. I have something that can absolutely work as if it was just string IDs. I have something that works with integer IDs, and I have something that combines the power of two together. So thank you very much, everyone, for your input there, because it helped me like consider and reconsider strings as a means of ID some more. And I think, you know, the system is better off now because of it. So thanks, community, helps a lot. And lastly, the last thing we've done is I've also added a fade in and fade out whenever I change maps. So previously I had added asynchronous level loading, but the game just kind of keeps running while the game is loading the other level. There's no interaction. It's kind of weird and jank. And so now, you know, if you hit a load point, input kind of freezes, there's a loadout, it flashes a loading screen. It's only that one frame because it doesn't take any time to load the levels at the moment, they're really small. And then it fades the new level back in, and then gives you control of your character again. So this is a pretty, you know, straightforward thing to do, but it's nice to get out of the way early, so that I can keep this. Anything that sort of interrupts the flow of the game, to me, is always a scary thing. And so where I'm gonna be freezing input, playing an animation, swapping a level, and then fading back out again, that's something that I'm like, I want to get that out of the way early, so that as I continue to make the game, I will consider it at every step, so I don't get surprised later, basically. That's basically the point there, yeah. So functionality-wise, there's still a lot of programming to do, of course there is, but I have a lot of foundations kind of done. There's still some big things that need programming, but a lot of foundations are done, and I think that a lot of the bottlenecks at the moment lie in writing, level design, and art. Art is something that I'm not sure if I can solve yet, so I'm gonna chip away at it, but I'm not gonna focus on it, because I know that I don't necessarily need the art to be solved for me to know whether or not my game will be a good game and whether or not I can make the game. But I do need the level design to be way more fleshed out and the writing to be way more fleshed out for me to know for sure whether or not the game will come together, right? I can use my shitty programmer art and to answer most questions. It will need a coat of paint in the end, regardless, but right now there are other design questions that need answering. And so right now I'm gonna keep doing some programming stuff. There's some cutscene stuff I wanna do, like make it so that you can skip cutscenes, you can pause during cutscenes and skip cutscenes. But then also I wanna put a little bit more focus on level design stuff, see what challenges await me as I embark on that some more, and then also continue focusing on writing. That's what I plan to do in the future. The last thing is I have been doing a lot more development streams. They're not scheduled still because I want to do them when I feel good and when I have things that I feel comfortable streaming, right? And so I have been doing a lot of those recently, and I have been doing it with my little VTuber model. His name is Cosmo. I've been doing that instead. And if you've been wondering, if you check out the VODs channel, if you've been checking out the streams even, you might be wondering why I have the VTuber model now. And the reason is simply because it's just more comfortable for me. I don't need super bright lights. If I feel kind of weird or gross that day or whatever, it's okay. I'm not on cam. I could have no camera, but we have a lot of fun with the model, actually. So I think it's way better to use the model than no model at all. And so that's been a lot of fun. I've been having a great time doing dev streams recently. So if you want to check out the dev streams, even though there haven't been a lot of progress update videos, there have been dev streams happening, and those streams have been going up on the VODs channel. So if you didn't know about that, click up here. I think we can put in the card to the VODs channel. It'll be in the description too. And see if you can catch me live. That would be really cool too. Okay, twitch.tv/gemballs. And yeah, that's about it, folks. This was a long video. I didn't really know how to structure this video. I just wanted to give you guys information. And so I just vomited the information at you. Hopefully this was interesting. And hopefully this satiates your hunger to know what's been going on, okay? Leave any thoughts you have in the comments below, and I appreciate you being here. Take care. Have a lovely week. Bye.